My name is Tara Finley, and I'm 32 years old. On Mother's Day, my dad booked a table for 6, but only 5 chairs. I stood by the wall holding my purse while my stepmom, her daughters, and my father sat laughing over Dom Perignon. The waiter asked, "Should we bring another chair?" My father said, "No, she's just here to pay the bill." So I paid the $2,147 bill. Then I sent one text message. 10 minutes later, his platinum cards were declined, one after another, in front of every diner in that Michelin-starred room. By midnight, the man in the $25,000 Rolex was washing dishes in the kitchen. 13 years of being their invisible ATM ended that night. With 4 digits, one phone call, and a mother's love that protected me from beyond the grave. Before I continue, please like and subscribe, but only if this story earns it. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. To understand why I was standing against that wall, I need to take you back 13 years, to the day my mother died, and my father forgot he ever had a daughter. I was 19 when pancreatic cancer took her. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers, those cheap carnations from the gift shop that nobody really wanted but everyone bought anyway. My mother lay in that narrow bed, her body so small beneath the white sheets, her hand cold in mine. She had been the heartbeat of our family, the one who softened my father's sharp edges, the one who made our house feel like a home instead of a showcase for his business success. In those final hours, I watched my father sit in the corner chair, distant, staring at his phone. Not crying, not holding her hand, just waiting. When the monitors flatlined, I collapsed over her body, sobbing until my throat burned raw. My father stood up, checked his watch, a Rolex Submariner she'd given him for their 20th anniversary, and said, "I'll handle the arrangements. You should go home." That was it. 23 years of marriage, and he handled her death like a business transaction. Before she slipped away, my mother had squeezed my fingers with whatever strength she had left. Her voice was barely a whisper, but I heard every word. "Promise me, Tara, no matter what happens, never let anyone make you feel like you're not worthy of love." I promised. I wore her simple wedding band home that night. I still wear it now, 13 years later, on my right hand. A thin gold circle that cost maybe $300, nothing compared to the diamonds my stepmother would eventually demand. But it was everything. I didn't know then that my father's coldness at her deathbed was just the beginning. I didn't know that within 8 months he would replace her. Diane appeared in our lives like smoke under a closed door, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. 8 months after the funeral, my father introduced her at dinner as a friend from work. She wore Chanel, head to toe, the kind of understated elegance that screamed money without saying a word. I remember how her eyes moved around our living room that first night. Not admiring, appraising, like she was calculating square footage and resale value. 3 months later, they were engaged. "Dad," I said, my voice cracking, "what about Mom? It's barely been a year." He didn't look at me. He was adjusting his cufflinks, new ones I noticed, that Diane had apparently bought him. "Your mother is gone, Tara. I have to keep living." The wedding was at Ridgewood Country Club. Vera Wang gown for Diane, Moet and Chandon flowing like water, 200 guests I'd never seen before. I was a bridesmaid, not the maid of honor. That went to Diane's sister. And when the photographer arranged the family portrait, I was shuffled to the back row, half hidden behind Diane's 2 daughters from her first marriage. "This is our new family," my father announced at the reception, his arm around Diane. "Megan, Chloe," he gestured to the 2 young women in matching blush pink dresses, "are now my daughters too." He didn't mention me at all. That night, I found my belongings being moved. Megan and Chloe had decided they wanted my bedroom, the one with the bay window that overlooked the garden my mother had planted. I was relocated to the small room at the end of the hall, the one that used to be storage. It's just temporary, I told myself. They just need time. I was so wrong. I graduated from Cornell with a degree in finance, top of my class. My father offered me a position at Finley and Associates, the commercial real estate firm he'd built from nothing. "You'll handle the books," he said. "You're good with numbers." I was good with numbers. I was also good with strategy, analysis, and identifying market trends that made the company millions. But my title remained staff accountant. My office was a windowless cube near the supply closet. Meanwhile, the bills started arriving. First, it was Megan's tuition at a private art school she'd never finish. Then Chloe's enrollment at a boutique liberal arts college, where she'd spend 7 years not graduating. Then came the shopping trips, the spa weekends, the family vacations to Aspen and St. Bart's that I was never invited to, but always asked to fund. "You're the financial one," Diane would say sweetly, sliding an invoice across the table. "You understand these things." An invoice for a Hermes Birkin, $12,000. I looked at my father. He was reading the Wall Street Journal, pretending not to hear. "Tara doesn't have a family of her own," he said without looking up. "No husband, no children. This is how she contributes." I processed the payment. I processed all of them. By my 30th birthday, I had funneled nearly $400,000 into my stepfamily's lifestyle. My own savings account held barely enough for 6 months' rent on my small apartment. Every month, I told myself the same lie. If I just give a little more, they'll finally see me. But they never saw me as family. I was just the account they withdrew from. 2 weeks before Mother's Day, my father called me into his office, the corner suite, mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. I'd been in this room maybe 3 times in 12 years of employment. "Sit," he said. On his desk sat a stack of documents. A Montblanc pen lay beside them, cap already removed. "I need you to sign these." I picked up the first page. My heart stopped. Transfer of co-ownership rights. Joint account number 4471-8832. This was the account my mother had established before her death, the one she'd made me co-owner of when I turned 18. The one containing what remained of her personal inheritance, money from her parents that she'd kept separate from my father's business. "This transfers my ownership to you," I said slowly. "It simplifies things." His voice was casual, rehearsed. "The account structure is outdated, makes the quarterly taxes complicated." I flipped through the pages. Buried in the legalese was exactly what I suspected. Full control of the account, and its $1.2 million balance, would transfer to Richard Finley exclusively upon my signature. "Dad," I set down the documents. "I need to consult with Mom's attorney before I sign anything regarding her estate." His jaw tightened. "Harold Brennan? That old man is practically senile. He was Mom's lawyer for 20 years. I'd like his opinion." Behind my father, in the doorway, I caught a glimpse of Diane. She was watching us, her arms crossed, a cold little smile on her lips. Richard leaned forward. "You'll regret this, Tara. I'm giving you a chance to stay part of this family." I stood up. "I am part of this family, Dad. That's why I want to make sure I understand what I'm signing." I left the documents unsigned on his desk. His parting words followed me out. "You'll regret this decision." The retaliation started within days. It began with small things, a missed email here, an accidental exclusion there. But by Diane's birthday the following week, the pattern was unmistakable. I showed up at the house at 7, same time we always gathered for family dinners. The driveway was full of cars. Through the dining room window, I could see them all seated around the table, laughing, candles lit, a 3-tiered cake from Magnolia Bakery gleaming in the center. The cake I had ordered. The cake I had paid for. I rang the doorbell. Megan answered, champagne glass in hand. Her eyebrows rose in theatrical surprise. "Oh, Tara, you came." "It's Diane's birthday dinner. I'm always here." "Are you?" She took a sip. "Weird. I don't remember seeing your name in the group chat." I pulled out my phone. The family text thread, the one we'd used for 3 years, showed my last message from 6 weeks ago. I scrolled up. I scrolled further. The conversation continued after that. Birthday planning, restaurant suggestions, cake preferences, gift ideas, all without me, because I had been removed. At the table, Diane was opening presents. She didn't look up when I entered. Neither did my father. Chloe glanced at me, then returned to her phone, smirking. "Oh, sweetie," Diane said, her voice dripping with false warmth as she finally acknowledged me. "We already finished dinner, but there might be some leftovers in the kitchen." My father reached for another slice of cake, the cake my money had bought. "Next time," he said, still not meeting my eyes, "check your phone more carefully." I stood in the doorway of my childhood home, uninvited to a party I'd paid for. And I said nothing, because back then, I still believed silence would earn me love. The humiliation at home was painful. The humiliation at work was surgical. Finley and Associates was meeting with Harrison Capital, a major investment group considering a $50 million partnership. I had spent 3 weeks preparing the financial analysis, projections, risk assessments, quarterly breakdowns. Every number triple-checked. The conference room was all glass and walnut overlooking the city. 6 executives from Harrison sat on one side. My father sat at the head. I stood at the presentation screen, ready to walk them through my work. "Good morning," I began. "I'll be presenting our financial—" "Tara just compiles the data," my father interrupted, rising from his chair. "I'll explain the important parts." The Harrison team shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a woman about my age, caught my eye with a look I recognized: pity. For the next 40 minutes, I stood against the wall while my father presented my work as his own. He stumbled over figures I could recite from memory. He mispronounced terms I'd defined in the appendix. But he smiled through it all, charming and confident, because confidence was all he'd ever needed. Afterward, as the Harrison executives filed out, my father clapped Megan on the shoulder. She had been interning for 2 months, which meant showing up late, taking long lunches, and posting Instagram stories from her desk. "Megan here is going to be our new director of communications," he announced. "She has real leadership potential." The Harrison woman glanced back at me one more time before disappearing into the elevator. I gathered my presentation materials in silence. "Tara," my father said as I passed him, "those projections were adequate. Keep it up." Adequate. 3 weeks of work. Adequate. I didn't respond. I just walked back to my windowless cube and closed the door. Diane struck next at Sunday dinner. We were in the formal dining room, the one my mother had decorated, though every trace of her taste had long since been erased. Diane had replaced the warm yellows with cold grays, the family photos with abstract art that cost more than my annual bonus. The table was set with Waterford crystal. We were eating Wagyu beef that cost $80 per portion, and Diane was speaking, as she always did, as if she were merely thinking out loud. "Richard, darling, I've been reading about estate planning." She cut a delicate piece of steak. "We really should update your will. Make sure Megan and Chloe are properly taken care of." My fork paused mid-air. "They're not getting any younger," she continued. "And let's be honest, they don't have Tara's advantages." "My advantages?" "Meaning, I actually worked." Richard nodded, sipping his $500 Bordeaux. "We should discuss it with the lawyers." "What about the shares Mom left me?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The table went silent. Diane's smile didn't waver, but her eyes sharpened. "Those shares. Yes, well, that's really a family matter, isn't it? And you're—" She let the pause hang. "Well, you're technically family, of course. From the first marriage." Richard cleared his throat. "The share distribution was complicated by your mother's arrangements. We may need to restructure." Restructure. For the good of the company. I looked at my father, the man who had held my mother's hand at their wedding. The man who couldn't be bothered to hold it when she died. "Those shares were Mom's," I said quietly. "She left them to me specifically." Diane laughed. A light, tinkling sound. Darling, the past is the past. I excused myself before dessert. Harold Brennan's office smelled like old books and leather. He had been my mother's attorney for 2 decades, a silver-haired man in his late 60s with kind eyes and a memory sharper than anyone gave him credit for. His firm was small, traditional, nestled in a brownstone that predated the glass towers downtown. Tara. He stood to greet me, clasping my hand in both of his. You look more like your mother every year. I almost cried. No one had mentioned my mother in months. We sat, and I told him everything. The documents my father wanted me to sign, the pressure about the shares, the whispers about restructuring. Harold listened without interrupting. When I finished, he opened a drawer and withdrew a thick folder. Your mother anticipated this, he said softly, all of it. He spread documents across his desk, her will, the trust agreement, and most importantly, the joint account agreement for account number 4471-8832. You are the legal co-owner of this account, he explained. Not a beneficiary, a co-owner. Your mother added you when you turned 18, with equal rights to hers. Equal rights? Including the co-owner freeze provision. He pointed to a clause highlighted in yellow. Either owner can freeze the account immediately if they suspect unauthorized activity or wish to protect the assets. 48-hour hold until both parties must appear to resolve. I stared at the highlighted words, my mother's signature beside them, dated 3 months before her diagnosis. She knew, I whispered. Harold nodded. She told me once, Richard changes when he doesn't get what he wants. I need to make sure Tara has protection. My eyes burned. Even dying, she had been fighting for me. Mr. Brennan, I said, I'm not ready to use this, but I need to know I can. Whenever you're ready, Tara. I'll be here. 3 days before Mother's Day, my father called. I was at my desk, still windowless, still near the supply closet, when his name lit up my phone. He never called me directly. Everything went through his assistant, or, increasingly, through Diane. Tara. His voice was warm, too warm. I've been thinking about you. I said nothing, waiting. Mother's Day is coming up. Diane suggested, and I agree, that it would be nice to have the whole family together, a special dinner. The whole family. Words I hadn't heard him use about me in years. I've made reservations at the Sterling, he continued. You know the place, the one with the Michelin star. I knew it. The Sterling was the most exclusive restaurant in the city. 3-month waiting list. $200 appetizers. The kind of place where my father liked to be seen. It would mean a lot to Diane if you came, he said. And to me. Something in my chest, that stupid, hopeful part of me that still wanted my father's love, flickered to life. What time? 7 o'clock. We'll have a private table. The 6 of us. The 6 of us. Him, Diane, Megan, Chloe, their respective partners, perhaps? I'll be there, I said. Wonderful. A pause. Oh, and Tara? Don't worry about the cost. I'll handle everything. He hung up. I sat in my small office staring at my phone, trying to remember the last time my father had offered to pay for anything that included me. The answer was, never. Something was wrong. Something was being planned. But that hopeful flicker in my chest was stubborn. Maybe, I told myself, this was his way of apologizing. Maybe this dinner was a new beginning. I was such a fool. The evening of Mother's Day, I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes. My apartment was small, a 1-bedroom in a modest building, nothing like the sprawling house I'd grown up in. But it was mine. Paid for with my own money, not theirs. I chose a navy blue wrap dress. Simple, elegant, nothing flashy. I didn't want to look like I was trying to compete with Diane's designer wardrobe or Megan's influencer aesthetic. I just wanted to look like myself. On my dresser sat a jewelry box. I opened it and lifted out my mother's wedding ring. I slid it onto my finger, feeling its familiar weight. She'd worn it every day of her marriage. 23 years of love and disappointment compressed into a thin band of gold. "Mom," I whispered, "I don't know what tonight is going to be, but I'm going to try." Before I left, I sat on my bed and opened my banking app. The joint account was there, showing a balance of $1.24 million. My father used it primarily for large family expenses, or at least, that's what he told the accountants. I knew better. I'd seen the withdrawals, Diane's spa retreats, Megan's failed business ventures, Chloe's endless tuition payments for a degree she'd never complete. I navigated to the account settings. The option was there, clearly labeled, Emergency Account Freeze. I didn't activate it, but I noted how it worked. One button, one confirmation code, 48-hour freeze on all linked cards and withdrawals. My mother had given me this option years ago, and I'd never even looked at it until Mr. Brennan showed me. She'd known. She'd prepared. I closed the app and grabbed my purse. Whatever happened tonight, I would be ready. I arrived at the Sterling 15 minutes early. The restaurant glowed against the evening sky, all warm lighting and floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. Valets in crisp uniforms waited at the entrance. A doorman in a charcoal suit held the door for guests who looked like they'd never worried about a bill in their lives. I parked my Honda Civic, practical, paid off, invisible among the Mercedes and BMWs, and sat in the driver's seat. Something told me not to go in yet. I pulled out my phone and dialed Harold Brennan. He answered on the second ring. "Tara? Mr. Brennan, I'm sorry to call so late. I'm about to have dinner with my father and his family. I don't know what's going to happen, but—" I paused, gathering my thoughts. "If I text you a code, 1234, I need you to send that freeze request to the bank immediately. You have the authorization form I signed?" "I have it right here," he said calmly. "Everything is prepared. If you send the code, I'll submit the request to First National's emergency services within minutes. All linked cards will be declined until the freeze is resolved." "Thank you." "Tara." His voice softened. "Your mother would be proud of you. Not for using the freeze, but for knowing you're worth enough to prepare for the possibility." My throat tightened. "I hope I don't need it." "So do I, but if you do, I'm here." I ended the call, slipped my phone into my purse, and stepped out of the car. The valet took my keys with a polite nod. The doorman welcomed me by name. They must have been briefed on the reservation. I took a breath and walked into whatever was waiting for me. The hostess led me through the restaurant like a guide through a museum. White tablecloths, crystal glassware catching candlelight, hushed conversations, and the soft clink of expensive silverware. Everything at the Sterling whispered exclusivity. "The Finley party," she said, gesturing toward a round table near the window. "Your family is already seated." I saw them before I counted the chairs. My father at the head of the table, his Rolex catching the light as he lifted a champagne flute. Diane beside him, draped in a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Megan and Chloe on either side, laughing at something on Chloe's phone. They had already ordered appetizers. A bottle of Dom Perignon sat in a silver ice bucket. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 chairs. The table was set for 6. I could see the place settings. 6 napkins, 6 sets of silverware, 6 crystal glasses, but only 5 chairs. I stood at the edge of the table waiting for someone to notice me, for someone to say, "Oh, we need another chair, hold on." No one looked up. Diane finally glanced in my direction. Her smile was the kind you'd give a waiter you were about to send back to the kitchen. "Oh, you made it. Not Tara. Not, 'We're so glad you're here.' Just, 'You made it.'" Megan snickered into her champagne glass. "She's just standing there like a coat rack." Chloe laughed, not bothering to look at me. My father set down his glass. His eyes met mine for half a second before sliding away. "There's room by the wall," he said. Diane wanted the table to have a certain aesthetic. Room by the wall, like a piece of furniture, like staff. I moved to stand near the wainscoting, my purse clutched against my side. The waiter appeared within minutes. He was young, mid-20s, professional, with the kind of careful attentiveness that Michelin-starred service requires. His eyes swept the table, counting settings, counting guests, noting the discrepancy. "Excuse me," he said politely, addressing my father. "I notice we have 6 place settings but only 5 chairs. Should I bring another for—" He glanced at me. "The young lady?" The table went quiet. Not the comfortable silence of consideration. The sharp silence of anticipation. Like an audience waiting for a punchline. My father didn't miss a beat. "No, that won't be necessary." He waved his hand dismissively, voice loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "She's just here to pay the bill." Megan burst into laughter. Chloe covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Diane smiled serenely, lifting her champagne as if my father had said something clever at a cocktail party. The waiter's face froze. His eyes darted to me, standing against the wall, clutching my purse, and I watched him try to process what he'd just heard. I see," he managed. "Well, if you change your mind—" "We won't," my father said. "Now, we're ready to order the main course." The waiter retreated, but not before giving me one last look. Confusion, pity, the expression of someone who has just witnessed something wrong but doesn't have the power to fix it. I felt the eyes of other diners turning toward me. A woman at the next table whispered to her husband. An older couple near the window exchanged glances of disbelief. My face burned, but I didn't move. I stood there, breathing slowly, my mother's ring pressing against my finger. "Promise me, Tara, never let anyone make you feel like you're not worthy of love." "I'm sorry, Mom." Tonight I almost broke that promise. Almost. The dinner stretched on for an eternity. I stood against the wall, watching my family feast, while my feet ached and my dignity bled. They ordered lobster thermidor, wagyu ribeye, truffle risotto with gold leaf, a second bottle of Dom Perignon because Megan declared the first one wasn't cold enough. Every few minutes a server would pass me, their eyes full of questions they couldn't ask. One young woman, barely out of training by the look of her, seemed on the verge of offering me a chair herself. I gave her a small shake of my head. "Not yet," I told myself. "Wait." "This lobster is divine," Diane announced, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin. "Richard, darling, you always know the best places." "Only the best for my family," he replied, raising his glass. His family. I was standing 4 feet away, and I wasn't included in that toast. Megan photographed every dish for Instagram. Chloe complained that her steak wasn't rare enough and sent it back twice. Diane commented on my dress. "That shade of blue washes you out, dear," without ever suggesting I sit down. And my father? My father ate, drank, laughed. He looked at me once during the entire meal. Just once. Our eyes met across the candlelight, and I searched for something. Guilt, shame, even acknowledgement. I found nothing. To him, I was already furniture. By 9 o'clock, the table was littered with the wreckage of a $2,800 meal, empty shells, stained napkins, crumbs of chocolate soufflé. The waiter approached with the leather bill holder. My father looked at me, finally, properly looked at me, and smiled. "Tara, time to do what you're here for." He gestured toward the bill like a king commanding a servant. I stepped forward, but not to obey. The champagne had done its work on Chloe. Her cheeks were flushed, her words slightly slurred, and she had lost the careful filter that her mother had trained into her. Alcohol has a way of revealing truths that sobriety keeps hidden. "This is so much better than Mom's original plan," Chloe giggled, swirling her 4th, or was it 5th, glass. Diane's head snapped toward her daughter. "Chloe." "What? I'm just saying." Chloe waved her hand. "Remember? You said after Tara signs the papers we were gonna—" "Chloe!" Diane's voice was ice. "Have some water." But I had heard enough. After Tara signs the papers, this dinner wasn't about Mother's Day. It wasn't about family reconciliation or new beginnings. This was the setup, the softening. Make me feel guilty, then isolated, then desperate, and then present the documents again. This time with witnesses. This time with public pressure. I looked at my father. He was studying his dessert fork with sudden fascination, refusing to meet my eyes. "Richard," Diane said smoothly, recovering her composure, "perhaps it's time for the gift we discussed?" My father cleared his throat. He reached into his jacket pocket. I knew what was coming before I saw it. The documents. The same ones from his office 2 weeks ago. Transfer of co-ownership rights. He wanted me to sign them here, now, in public, where I couldn't make a scene, couldn't consult a lawyer, couldn't do anything except smile and comply. They had planned this from the beginning. The 5 chairs weren't just cruelty, they were strategy. Stand me up like staff, humiliate me into submission, then hand me a pen. I looked at the documents in my father's hand. I looked at Diane's triumphant smile. And something inside me went very, very quiet. My father stood up, documents in hand, and approached me. The gesture was almost ceremonial, like a king bestowing a gift upon a lesser noble, magnanimous and condescending all at once. "Tara," he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "I have a Mother's Day gift for you." The irony wasn't lost on me. Mother's Day, and he was asking me to sign away everything my actual mother had left me. He placed the documents in my hands. The Mont Blanc pen followed. "Sign these," he said, smiling, "and everything becomes simpler. You won't have to worry about complicated financial arrangements anymore. Diane and I will handle everything." I stared at the papers. The same clauses I'd memorized. The same trap I'd refused 2 weeks ago. "Dad," I said quietly, we discussed this. "That was before." His smile tightened. "Before you made things difficult. Before you refused to be part of this family." Diane materialized at his elbow. "Tara, darling, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign, and then you can sit down and have dessert with us. Like family." Like family. Standing against a wall for 2 hours while they feasted, and now they were offering me a seat in exchange for my inheritance. Megan raised her phone, recording. "This is going to be such a sweet moment. Tara finally joining the family for real." I looked at the documents. I looked at my father. I looked at the restaurant full of strangers who had watched me stand like a servant for hours. And I made my decision. No. The word was quiet, but it landed like a thunderclap. "Excuse me?" My father's smile vanished. "I said no. I'm not signing anything, not tonight, not ever." The table erupted. My father's face flushed crimson. "You're making a mistake, Tara." His voice dropped to a hiss. "A very serious mistake. If you don't sign, you're out. Out of the company, out of this family, out of everything." Diane stepped forward, her composure cracking. "You have nothing. You're a nobody, a little accountant shuffling papers in a closet. Without us, you're—" "Without you," I said calmly, "I'm exactly what I was before. Your ATM." Megan lowered her phone. Chloe stopped laughing. Even the diners at nearby tables had gone quiet, watching the drama unfold. "You ungrateful," my father started. "I'll pay the bill." The words stopped him mid-sentence. "What?" "The bill." I nodded toward the leather folder sitting on the table. "That's what you wanted, isn't it? That's why I'm here, to pay." My father blinked, momentarily confused. Then he regrouped, seizing the pivot. "Yes, fine. At least you can do that much." Diane smoothed her expression back into something resembling civility. "See? That's all we were asking. Tara, you're always so dramatic." I walked to the table and picked up the bill. $2,047.60. Lobster, wagyu, champagne, truffle, gold leaf, a meal I hadn't eaten a single bite of. I looked at my father one last time. "You told that waiter I was only here to pay the bill," I said quietly. "You were right. That's exactly what I'm here for." I turned and walked toward the cashier's station. Behind me, I heard Diane whisper victoriously to my father, "See, she knows her place." No, they were wrong. I wasn't accepting my place. I was choosing my moment. And when I reached the register, when I pulled out my card, I finally understood what my mother had been preparing me for. If you've ever been treated like a wallet by people who should have loved you, not as a person, but as a source of funds, leave a heart in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone. And if you want to find out what happened next, after I swiped that card for 2,847ers, stay with me. Because this dinner was just getting started. Let me take you back 2 weeks. Harold Brennan's office, the leather chairs, the folder of documents my mother had prepared before she died. I sat across from him, my hands trembling slightly as he explained what my mother had done, what she had anticipated, what she had protected me from. This account, Harold said, pointing to the joint account agreement, was established with a specific provision. Your mother insisted on it when she added you as co-owner. The freeze provision. Exactly. He nodded. Under Section 7 of the agreement, either co-owner can request an immediate emergency freeze. No advance notice required. The bank locks all linked cards and access within minutes. Why would she do that? Harold looked at me with those kind, knowing eyes. Because she knew your father. She loved him in her way, but she didn't trust him with your future. I thought about my mother in that hospital bed, weak, dying, but still fighting, not against the cancer, but for me. She told me once, Harold continued, Richard will be fine as long as he's getting what he wants. But the moment he doesn't, the moment someone stands in his way, he becomes a different man. My throat tightened. She saw it, Tara. She saw what he would become. And she made sure you would have protection when that day came. I had left his office that day with the app installed on my phone. The freeze authorization form signed. A code agreed upon between us. 1234. Simple, untraceable, devastating. I hadn't planned to use it. I had hoped, desperately, foolishly hoped, that it would never come to that. But my mother had known better. She had always known better. The phone call in my car wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. When I had called Harold before entering the Sterling, I wasn't sure I would need him. Part of me still believed my father might surprise me, might pull out a chair, might treat me like a daughter instead of a credit line. But the call was ready. The authorization was live. All I had to do was send 4 digits, and the bank's emergency account services would receive Harold's request within minutes. The freeze would hit every card linked to that joint account, every single one. My father had funneled most of his personal spending through that account over the years. Easier for tax purposes, he always claimed. His American Express Platinum, his Visa Infinite, Diane's supplementary cards, even the business cards tied to Finley & Associates Petty Cash, all connected to account number 444718832. My mother had been meticulous. She had made me co-owner of the primary account, not a subsidiary one, the nerve center of their entire financial life. And now, standing at the cashier's station at the Sterling, watching the hostess process my payment for $2,147.63, I understood why. You are not powerless, my mother's voice whispered in my memory. You were never powerless. You just didn't know where your power was. The transaction completed. My card, my personal card, separate from the joint account, was accepted. I signed the receipt, and then, as the cashier handed me my copy, I slipped my phone from my purse. I opened my messages. I typed 4 numbers. My finger hovered over the send button. Behind me, I could hear my family laughing, ordering after-dinner drinks, calling for more champagne. I pressed send and walked back to the table. The cashier looked at me with something like respect. Thank you for dining with us, Ms. Finley, she said, handing me the receipt. I hope you have a pleasant evening. Pleasant. That was one word for it. It's been memorable, I replied. I slipped the receipt into my purse and turned back toward the dining room. My phone was already back in my pocket, the message delivered, the countdown begun. Harold worked quickly. I knew that about him. By now, the email would be hitting First National's Emergency Services Department. By now, someone in the after-hours fraud team would be processing the freeze request. By now, the authorization form, signed by me, the legal co-owner, would be verified against their records. 5 minutes, maybe 10. That's all the time my father had left. I walked back to the table where my family was still celebrating. Diane was applying fresh lipstick. Megan was scrolling through her photos, selecting the best ones for Instagram. Chloe was giggling about something on her phone. My father looked up as I approached. "All done?" he asked, the smugness practically dripping from his voice. "All done. Good girl." He turned back to Diane. "Now, about that champagne. Marcus, is that you?" He was already waving at someone across the room. Marcus Webb, the general manager, who was making his rounds among the VIP tables. Marcus approached with the smooth grace of a man who had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. "Mr. Finley," he said, "I hope everything was to your satisfaction this evening." "Excellent as always," my father said. "Actually, we'd like another bottle of the Dom Perignon to take home." Marcus nodded. "Of course, I'll have it brought out." He glanced at me, standing once again by the wall, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, understanding. We'd known each other a long time, Marcus and I, since before my mother died. I resumed my position by the wall and waited. The restaurant hummed around me, soft conversations, clinking glasses, the quiet efficiency of servers moving between tables. Everything was normal. Everything was calm. Inside my chest, my heart hammered. 5 minutes. That's what Harold had estimated. 5 minutes from the time the email reached the bank to the time the freeze would activate. All linked cards, all access. Gone. My father signaled for the waiter. "And add a bottle of the Moet for the road. We're celebrating." "Of course, sir. Same card as the reservation?" "Yes, yes." He waved dismissively, reaching into his jacket pocket for his wallet. Diane leaned into him, whispering something that made him smile. Megan was still editing photos. Chloe was texting someone, her thumbs flying across the screen. None of them noticed me. None of them ever did. I watched the waiter disappear toward the bar area. I watched my father laugh at something Diane said. I watched my stepsisters exist in their bubble of privilege and petty cruelty, and I counted down. 2 minutes, 1 minute. The waiter returned with the champagne, 2 bottles, wrapped in tissue paper, cradled like precious cargo. "The total comes to $847, he said pleasantly. "Will that be on the same card, Mr. Finley?" My father handed over his American Express Platinum without looking, still talking to Diane, still not paying attention. The waiter took it to the portable terminal at the side station. I held my breath. The waiter frowned. He tried again. His frown deepened. He approached the table with the careful expression of someone about to deliver bad news. "Mr. Finley," he said hesitantly, "I'm very sorry, but your card has been declined." The laughter stopped, and everything began to fall apart. My father's smile froze. "Declined?" He laughed, an uncomfortable, forced sound. "That's impossible. Try it again." The waiter hesitated. "I did try it twice, sir. The machine shows transaction not authorized." "Then there's something wrong with your machine." My father snatched his card back, examining it as if it might reveal the problem. "This is an American Express Platinum. The limit is $50,000. Try a different terminal." The waiter nodded and retreated, card in hand, professionalism masking his discomfort. Diane leaned forward. "Richard, what's going on?" "Nothing." His jaw was tight. "Just a technical glitch. These things happen at restaurants." But I saw the first flicker of something in his eyes. Not quite fear, not yet. Confusion. The kind of confusion that comes when the world stops working the way you expect it to. Megan lowered her phone, suddenly interested. "Dad's card got declined? That's embarrassing." "It's not embarrassing," he snapped. "It's a mistake." The waiter returned. His expression told the story before he spoke. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Finley. We tried a different terminal, but the result was the same. The card is being declined. My father stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Several heads turned at nearby tables. Fine, use this one. He thrust his Visa Infinite at the waiter. There must be an issue with American Express tonight. The waiter took the second card, walked to the terminal, swiped, waited, returned. Sir, this card has also been declined. The color drained from my father's face. He reached for his wallet and pulled out every card he had, MasterCard, a corporate card, even a Discover he probably hadn't used in years. Try all of them, he demanded. The waiter gathered them with the careful neutrality of someone documenting evidence. I stayed by the wall and said nothing. Marcus Webb appeared like a shadow given form. He moved through the restaurant with the quiet authority of a man who had handled crises far worse than this. His charcoal suit was immaculate. His expression was professionally neutral. But when his eyes met mine, briefly, carefully, I saw something else. He knew. Maybe not the specifics. But Marcus had known my family for 15 years. He'd served my mother at this very restaurant when I was a teenager. He'd watched my father change after she died. He'd seen me show up to family dinners alone, always paying, never eating. He understood what was happening, and he wasn't going to stop it. Mr. Finley, Marcus said smoothly, approaching the table. I understand there's been some difficulty with your cards this evening. It's a bank error, my father said through gritted teeth. I'm calling them right now. He already had his phone out, jabbing at the screen. The call connected. He stepped away from the table, voice low and furious. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see his face. The confusion became something darker when the bank's automated message played. Your account has been temporarily frozen at the request of a co-owner. For more information, please contact... He hung up. He dialed again, got the same message, hung up again. His hands were shaking when he turned back to the table. The account, he said slowly, staring at nothing, is frozen. Diane's face went pale. What do you mean, frozen? Frozen, all of it, every card. Megan stood up. Well, unfreeze it. I can't... He stopped. His eyes found me across the room, standing by the wall, purse in hand, calm. You, he breathed. You did this. My father crossed the distance between us in 3 strides. His face was mottled red and white, fury and shock competing for dominance. His voice, when it came, was a barely controlled hiss. What did you do? I met his eyes. No flinching, no looking away. I exercised my rights as co-owner of account 4471-8832. Your rights? His voice rose. Heads turned throughout the restaurant. You have no rights. That's my account. Actually, I said, my voice steady, it's our account. Mom made me co-owner when I was 18. The agreement includes a co-owner freeze provision. Either owner can freeze the account immediately if they believe it's necessary to protect the assets. Protect the assets? Diane had joined him now, her composure shattered. You're stealing from us. I'm not taking anything. I'm freezing it. There's a 48-hour hold. Both owners have to appear at the bank to resolve it. You can't do this. My father's voice cracked. I'm your father. I looked at him. This man who had made me stand against a wall for 2 hours, who had told a stranger I was only there to pay the bill, who had tried to manipulate me into signing away my inheritance. Yes, I said. You're my father, and for 13 years I waited for you to act like one. He stared at me, mouth opening and closing, no words coming out. Behind him, I saw Marcus approaching with the careful tread of a man about to deliver an ultimatum. Mr. Finley, Marcus said, I'm afraid we need to resolve the matter of the outstanding balance. The champagne comes to $847. If none of your cards are functional, we'll need to discuss alternative arrangements. My father didn't even look at him. He was still staring at me. For the first time in 13 years, I think he actually saw me. The Sterling's dining room had become a theater. Every table within earshot had stopped pretending not to watch. Forks hovered in midair. Conversations died. Even the servers had paused, gathered at the edges of the room like spectators at a tennis match. And in the center of it all, my family was disintegrating. "Richard!" Diane's voice climbed toward hysteria. "Do something!" "I'm trying." He was jabbing at his phone again. "The bank's customer service line isn't answering. It's after hours." "Well, call someone who matters." "Who? Who do you want me to call, Diane?" Marcus cleared his throat. "Mr. Finley, Mrs. Finley, I must inform you that if the bill cannot be settled, I'll need to hold valid identification as security while we contact the authorities." "The authorities?" Megan's face went white. "You can't call the police on us." "I'm afraid that's standard procedure when guests cannot pay their bill, ma'am." Chloe burst into tears. "Mom, this is so humiliating." "You think I don't know that?" Diane spun toward me, finger pointing like a weapon. "This is all her fault. She's a jealous, spiteful—" "Mrs. Finley," Marcus's voice hardened almost imperceptibly, "I'll remind you that we're in a public establishment. I suggest we resolve this quietly." Richard grabbed his phone again, scrolling desperately through contacts. "I'll call David. He can wire money." "David's in Dubai this week," Diane snapped. "You told me at lunch." Then Steven's still angry about the golf tournament. They had no one. All those business dinners, all those country club connections, all that careful social climbing, and in their moment of need, they couldn't produce a single person willing to send them $847 at 10 p.m. on a Sunday. The irony was almost beautiful, almost. I picked up my purse. The movement was small, just a slight adjustment, a preparation to leave, but my father noticed immediately. "Tara?" His voice had changed. The anger was still there, but now it was threaded with something I hadn't heard in 13 years. Desperation. "Tara, you can't leave." "Why not?" "Because—" He gestured helplessly at the table, at Diane's tear-streaked face, at Chloe's hiccuping sobs, at Megan's stunned silence. "Because we're your family." The word hung in the air between us. Family. I looked at the table with its 5 chairs. At the wall I'd been standing against for 2 hours. At the faces of people who had spent years treating me like an ATM and were now horrified that the ATM had finally closed. "You told that waiter," I said quietly, "that I was only here to pay the bill. That was— I didn't mean—" "You meant it." I kept my voice even. "Every word. And so did I, when I said no." I walked toward the door. Behind me I heard my father stumble after me. "Tara, please, what am I supposed to do?" I stopped at the threshold, turned one last time. Marcus was standing nearby, and I caught his eye. He gave me the smallest nod, a gesture of solidarity from one witness to another. "You know what, Dad?" I said. "Mom used to tell me something. She said, 'Never let anyone make you feel like you're not worthy of love.' I spent 13 years breaking that promise. Tonight, I'm finally keeping it." I looked at Diane, at Megan, at Chloe. "I'm not your daughter," I said. "I'm my mother's daughter." And I walked out into the night. The last thing I heard was my father's voice cracking. "Marcus, please, is there somewhere we could help in the kitchen?" Now some of you might think my story ends there, with me walking into the night and my family facing their humiliation alone. But what happened next was even more satisfying than I imagined. If you've ever had to set a boundary with someone who should have loved you unconditionally, subscribe to this channel. You'll find more stories just like this one. And keep watching, because we're not done yet. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. A text from an unknown number, but I knew who it was. They're in the back, washing dishes. The father and the older daughter. The mother refused. Marcus told her it was that or calling the police. She's sitting in the break room crying. The younger one threw up in the bathroom. I read it twice. Then I set down my phone and laughed. Not cruelly, not triumphantly, Just exhaustedly. The kind of laugh that comes when something absurd and inevitable finally happens. My father, the man with the $25,000 Rolex, the custom Italian suits, the corner office overlooking downtown, was washing dishes in the kitchen of a Michelin-starred restaurant. Another text came through. First time I've ever seen someone in a Submariner scrubbing a stock pot. Marcus. Of course it was Marcus. I typed back, "Thank you for telling me, and thank you for not helping them." His response was immediate. "I remember your mother. She was always kind to the staff. She would have been proud of you tonight." My vision blurred. I set the phone down and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my father was elbow deep in dirty water and soap suds. Diane was having a breakdown in a restaurant break room. Megan was scrubbing pans beside the man she'd always considered herself superior to. And I was here, alone, free. The $2,847 I'd paid for their dinner was gone, but it was a small price for what I'd gained. Not revenge. I wasn't interested in revenge. I'd gained something far more valuable. I'd gained the knowledge that I would never stand against another wall, waiting to be seen. Never again. My phone rang at 8:17 the next morning. I was sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, watching the sun climb over the city. I'd barely slept, but I felt more rested than I had in years. "Richard Finley," the screen read. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Tara." His voice was hoarse, exhausted, nothing like the confident, commanding tone I'd grown up fearing. "We need to talk about the account." "Good morning to you too, Dad. This isn't the time for—" He stopped, took a breath. "The company has transactions scheduled for this week, payroll, vendor payments. If the account stays frozen, we'll default on contracts." I sipped my coffee. "That sounds serious." "It is serious. Tara, I'm asking you, I'm begging you to unfreeze it." The word begging hung in the air. Richard Finley didn't beg. Richard Finley demanded, commanded, and occasionally condescended. But he never begged. Until now. "I'll consider it," I said calmly. "But first, we need to discuss some things." "What things?" "First, you will never ask me to sign over my rights to any account or shares again. Ever." Silence. "Second, I will be appointed CFO with a salary that reflects my actual work, not the token amount you've been paying me to do the job of 3 people." More silence. "Third, no more funding Diane's lifestyle or your stepdaughter's failures from company accounts. Their expenses are their responsibility." "Tara, you can't just—" "You have 24 hours, I said. After that, I'll contact Harold Brennan to begin discussions about liquidating my 51% share of the company." I heard him inhale sharply. 51%? You don't have— Mom's will. You should read it sometime." I hung up before he could respond. Then I finished my coffee in peace. He called back 6 hours later. "Fine." One word, but I could hear the defeat in it. "I'll need everything in writing," I said. "Mr. Brennan will draft the agreement. Both parties sign with witnesses." "Tara, those are my terms. Non-negotiable." A long pause. I could picture him in his office, staring at the phone, realizing for the first time that he had no leverage, that he had never had leverage, that the power he thought he held had been an illusion, one my mother had quietly dismantled years ago. "Fine," he said again. "When?" "This afternoon. Harold's office. 3 o'clock." I didn't give him time to argue. I just hung up. At 3 o'clock, I sat across from my father in Harold Brennan's mahogany-paneled conference room. The documents were already prepared. Harold had worked through the night. Every term I'd demanded was there in black and white. Richard signed. His hand trembled slightly, but he signed. I signed beneath him. Harold notarized every page. When it was done, I looked at my father. He seemed smaller somehow, older. The Rolex on his wrist looked gaudy instead of impressive. "I'll unfreeze the account," I said, "and I'll begin the process of separating my portion into an independent account. Within 30 days, we'll have no shared finances. He nodded wordlessly. And Dad? He looked up. This wasn't about hurting you. It was about protecting myself. That's all it ever was. He didn't respond, just stood, put on his coat, and walked out. Harold turned to me after the door closed. Your mother, he said softly, would be so proud. I touched the gold ring on my finger. I know, I whispered. I can feel it. 3 months later, my life was unrecognizable. I had an office with windows now. Corner suite, 3rd floor, overlooking the park where my mother used to take me for walks. The nameplate on my door read, Tara Finley, Chief Financial Officer. My salary reflected my value, $185,000 annually, plus benefits, plus the equity stake I'd always been entitled to. The company was still standing, despite Richard's apocalyptic predictions. It turned out that when you stop hemorrhaging money into designer bags and endless tuition for eternal students, the books balance quite nicely. Megan had been forced to find actual employment. Last I heard, she was working at a PR firm downtown, answering phones and learning what the rest of us already knew. The world doesn't owe you anything. Chloe finally finished her degree, or at least enrolled in a program that might actually lead to one. Without unlimited access to my father's wallet, she'd suddenly found motivation. Diane still lived in the house, still wore designer clothes, but something in her had diminished. She no longer hosted lavish parties or posted about her blessed life on social media. When I saw her at required family functions, holiday dinners that my father insisted on for appearances, she rarely spoke. And my father? We had a relationship now. Not the one I'd always wanted, not the loving, supportive connection I'd dreamed of as a child, but a functional one, professional, civil. He called me by my name instead of treating me like staff. He asked my opinion in meetings instead of dismissing me. He never again suggested I stand by the wall. It wasn't love, but it was respect. And after 13 years of invisibility, respect felt like a miracle. The following Mother's Day, I didn't go to dinner with my father. He called, of course, made the obligatory invitation. Something about the Sterling. A table for 6, this time with 6 chairs, he assured me. I declined. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where my mother was buried. It was a quiet place, shaded by old oaks, the kind of peaceful spot she would have chosen for herself. Her headstone was simple, gray granite, her name and dates, and below them the words she'd asked to be inscribed, Beloved Mother, forever remembered. I knelt on the grass and placed white roses against the stone, her favorites. Hey, Mom. The wind rustled through the leaves. I imagined it was her, listening. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. All those years I thought if I just gave enough they'd love me. But you knew, didn't you? You knew love doesn't come from emptying yourself for people who treat you like a convenience. I traced my fingers over her name. Last year on Mother's Day, I stood against a wall in a restaurant while Dad told a stranger I was only there to pay the bill. This year I'm here, with you, and I'm finally standing in the middle of my own life. A bird sang somewhere in the trees. The afternoon sun was warm on my shoulders. I kept my promise, I whispered. I almost broke it. For 13 years I almost broke it every day, but I kept it. I touched the gold ring on my finger, the one she'd worn for 23 years. I'll never let anyone make me feel like I'm not worthy of love again. Not ever. The wind seemed to answer. I stayed until sunset. I'm telling you this story not so you'll learn how to get revenge. Revenge was never the point. The point is this. You have the right to protect yourself, even from family, especially from family. For 13 years, I believed that love meant sacrifice, that being a good daughter meant accepting whatever treatment was handed to me, that if I just gave enough, endured enough, smiled through enough humiliation, eventually they would see my worth. But worth isn't something other people grant you, it's something you claim for yourself. When I stood against that wall in the Sterling, I could have stayed silent. I could have signed those papers. I could have continued being the quiet, compliant Tara who never made waves. But my mother didn't prepare me for obedience. She prepared me for freedom. The documents she left me, the joint account, the freeze provision, the carefully structured ownership of 51% of a company my father believed was entirely his. Those weren't weapons. They were shields. Protection for the day when I finally understood that I deserved better. Maybe you're in a situation like mine. Maybe someone in your life, a parent, a partner, a friend, treats you like you exist only to serve their needs. Maybe you've convinced yourself that keeping the peace is more important than keeping your dignity. I'm here to tell you it's not. You are not a convenience. You are not an ATM. You are not the person who stands by the wall while everyone else sits at the table. You are worthy of a chair. You are worthy of being seen. And if the people in your life can't offer you that, if they can't treat you with basic human respect, then maybe it's time to stop waiting for them to change. Maybe it's time to change your own position. Tonight, I'm sitting in my apartment. It's a different apartment now, larger, with big windows that overlook the river. I bought it with my own money, from my own accounts, with no one else's name on the deed. There's a cup of chamomile tea on my table, still steaming. The city lights glitter beyond the glass. And on my right hand, my mother's wedding ring catches the lamplight, just like it always has. I'm not lonely anymore. I was lonely when I stood in that restaurant, surrounded by people who shared my blood but not my heart. I was lonely when I sat in that windowless office, doing work that was never acknowledged. I was lonely when I paid for vacations I wasn't invited to, dinners I wasn't welcome at, gifts I would never receive. But now I'm alone. And alone is not the same as lonely. Alone means quiet evenings with books I chose for myself. It means friendships with people who ask how I'm doing without needing anything in return. It means looking in the mirror and seeing someone who kept her promise, to her mother and to herself. That's my story. Mother's Day. 5 chairs. And the moment I decided to finally stand up for myself by walking away. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment telling me, have you ever had to set a boundary with someone who should have loved you unconditionally? What happened? I read every comment, every single one. And if you want more stories like this, stories about finding your voice and reclaiming your worth, check out the videos in the description below. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember who you are and never stand by the wall again.